Marcus Venn had spent 3 years studying the orbital debris that shouldn't exist. The metal fragments floating in lazy orbit around Earth were too precise, too deliberately positioned to be space junk. Their surfaces held patterns that resembled circuitry but operated on principles that defied conventional physics. Today, he finally understood why. The breakthrough came at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. Marcus sat in his cramped laboratory aboard the Kepler station, surrounded by holographic displays showing spectral analyses and energy signatures. His fingers trembled as he rotated a three-dimensional model of what he'd been calling Object 17. It wasn't a satellite. It was a camera. An alien camera that had been watching Earth for at least 4,000 years. Director Osei needs to see this immediately, Marcus muttered, already composing the priority transmission. But before he could send it, every piece of alien technology in his lab simply stopped functioning. The fragments went dark. Energy readings flatlined. It was as if someone had flipped a switch across the entire solar system. Director Amora Osei arrived within the hour, her expression tight with concern. She was a tall woman with silver threading through her black hair, someone who had built her career on preparing humanity for first contact. Now, standing in Marcus's lab, she looked at the dead technology with something close to fear. "How many observation posts have we identified?" she asked. 4 to 7 in Earth orbit alone, Marcus replied. "Probably thousands more throughout the solar system. They've been watching us since before recorded history, Amora. Watching and documenting everything. And now they've all gone silent simultaneously." She touched one of the fragments, its surface cold and inert. "Why now? What changed?" Marcus pulled up a medical report on his display. This. 3 weeks ago, doctors in Melbourne reported the first case. A woman who could perceive electromagnetic fields directly, without instruments. Then cases in Buenos Aires, Lagos, Beijing. People experiencing spontaneous neurological changes. The ability to process quantum probability fields. Consciousness existing in superposition states. "You're talking about the Ascension reports." Amora's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "The government thinks it's a neurological virus." "It's not a virus. It's evolution. Rapid, coordinated evolution across the entire species." Marcus opened another file, showing growth curves that climbed exponentially. "In 6 months, maybe less, every human will have these capabilities. We're changing, Amora. Fundamentally changing into something new." The laboratory door chimed. Marcus looked up to see a figure in the airlock, but his breath caught in his throat. The being was humanoid but clearly alien, skin like polished obsidian, eyes that reflected light in colors humans shouldn't be able to see, and a presence that made the air feel heavier. "My name is Tessic," the alien said, its voice emerging from a translation device. "I was an observer for the Korath Collective. I've spent 60 years watching your species. I stayed behind because someone needs to warn you." Amora moved protectively in front of Marcus. "Warn us about what?" Tessic's eyes dimmed with what might have been sorrow. "About what you're becoming. You're not the first species to reach this stage. Humanity is evolving into its final form, and when that transformation completes, you'll understand why every civilization in the galaxy just sealed their borders and went silent. We've seen this 12 times before. 12 species reached transcendence. 12 species became something so alien, so fundamentally incomprehensible, that they stopped being part of the galactic community entirely." "What happened to them?" Marcus asked. "That's the problem," Tessic said quietly. "We don't know. They ascended beyond our ability to perceive or understand them. But we know they still exist somewhere, in some form. And we know that every species that comes into contact with them afterward either goes mad or simply ceases to exist. Your observation posts didn't shut down because we abandoned you. They shut down because the galaxy is terrified of what you're about to become." The weight of those words settled over the laboratory like a shroud. Marcus looked at the dead alien technology, then at the medical reports showing humanity's transformation spreading like wildfire across the planet. They were changing into something unprecedented, and the galaxy's only response was to hide and pray humanity wouldn't notice them once the transformation completed. Outside the station window, Earth rotated peacefully, unaware that it was evolving into something that made ancient civilizations flee in terror. Marcus stood in the abandoned observation post, his helmet light cutting through the darkness. The structure had been built inside a hollowed asteroid in Earth's L5 Lagrange point, hidden for millennia. Tessic had given them the access codes before disappearing back into whatever shadows the retreating aliens now occupied. "This is incredible," Joran Huang breathed beside him. The historian had been Marcus's colleague for 5 years, a meticulous researcher who specialized in human prehistory. Now he was the only person Marcus trusted with this discovery. These archives could rewrite everything we know about our own development. The chamber stretched before them like a cathedral made of light and data. Holographic displays flickered to life as they approached, responding to their presence. Each column of light represented a different era of human observation. The Bronze Age, the Renaissance, the Industrial Revolution, the Digital Age. But it was the section at the far end that drew Marcus forward, the one labeled in alien script that his translator rendered as Comparative Ascension Studies. They didn't just watch us, Marcus said, his voice echoing in the empty space. They were comparing us to others. Joran activated the first file. A holographic display materialized, showing a planet covered in crystalline structures. The beings that inhabited it were vaguely insectoid, their bodies segmented and gleaming. Text scrolled alongside the images. Species 7 Alpha, ascension cycle initiated 847,000 standard years ago. 800,000 years, Joran whispered. That's not just ancient, that's geological time. Marcus watched as the hologram showed the species' transformation. Their crystalline structures began to resonate at frequencies that bent light. Their consciousness spread beyond individual bodies, creating networks that pulsed with synchronized thought. Then, abruptly, the footage became distorted. Strange geometries appeared that hurt to look at, shapes that seemed to exist in more dimensions than the eye could process. Ascension completed, the text read. Observer status, terminated. Reason, perceptual incompatibility. All contact attempts resulted in cognitive breakdown of observation teams. Joran pulled up another file. Then another. Each showed a different species, a different world, a different path to transformation. The Velthrin had been aquatic beings who merged their consciousness with their planet's ocean, creating a single vast mind. The Chorix were energy beings who transcended physical form entirely, becoming patterns of pure information that could rewrite reality through thought alone. The Mytherians had evolved the ability to exist in multiple timelines simultaneously, making decisions that retroactively altered their own past. 12 species in total. 12 transformations. And in every case, the same result. The observers had fled, unable to comprehend what their subjects had become. Look at this, Joran said, pulling up a comparative analysis. The galactic civilizations tried to study the ascended races. They sent probes, established contact protocols, even attempted mathematical communication. But every attempt ended in disaster. Marcus read the reports with growing dread. A probe sent to contact the ascended Velthrin returned broadcasting a signal that caused every ship that received it to immediately navigate into the nearest star. A diplomatic team that approached an ascended species territory simply vanished, leaving behind only their ships drifting empty in space. Most disturbing was the fate of the Jorian Empire, which had attempted military action against an ascended civilization. The entire empire, spanning 200 star systems, experienced simultaneous catastrophic failure of all technology. Within a month, their civilization collapsed completely. They're not hostile, Marcus realized. At least not intentionally. They're just so far beyond us that their mere existence is dangerous. Like trying to shake hands with a black hole, Joran agreed grimly. A new file caught Marcus's attention, one marked with a symbol that his translator couldn't render. He opened it, and a voice emerged from the speakers, distorted and layered with harmonics that suggested multiple beings speaking in unison. Was the memory echo, the voice said. A fragment of the Kithran civilization, one of the first to ascend. I was created before the transformation as a warning, a record for those who come after. If you're hearing this, your species is approaching the threshold. Marcus and Joran exchanged glances. Joran nodded, and Marcus gestured for the recording to continue. You must understand, ascension is not evolution in the way you comprehend it. It is a metamorphosis so complete that the word change is insufficient. Imagine trying to explain color to a being that perceives only sound, or describe time to a consciousness that experiences all moments simultaneously. That gap in understanding is nothing compared to what separates the ascended from the biological. The memory echo's voice took on a quality that made Marcus's head ache, as if the words themselves contained too much meaning. We tried to maintain contact with our kin who remained behind, but the attempt drove them to madness. Our thoughts, translated into forms they could perceive, became cognitive hazards. Our presence warped space-time in ways that made stable matter unstable. We were forced to withdraw, not out of choice, but out of necessity. What do the ascended do? Joran asked the recording, though it had been made millennia ago. Where do they exist? As if responding to the question, the memory echo continued. We exist in spaces between spaces. We perceive dimensions you cannot imagine. We manipulate fundamental forces as easily as you might move your limbs. But more than that, we create new universes, pocket realities, consciousness itself sculpted like clay. Some of us explore the infinite possibilities of existence. Others merge together into vast metaconsciousnesses spanning galaxies. A few, like myself in fragments, try to maintain bridges to what we once were. The recording flickered, becoming unstable. But here is the truth that terrifies the galaxy: ascension cannot be stopped. Once a species reaches the threshold, the transformation is inevitable. And once it begins, every member of that species will eventually ascend. There is no remaining behind. The change is written into your genetics now, spreading through your entire population. In 6 months, there will be no humans as you currently understand the term. There will only be what comes next. The hologram distorted further, and Marcus saw something that made his rational mind rebel. For just a moment, the memory echo's true form became visible, not the translation device's rendering, but the actual entity. It existed in shapes that folded through impossible angles, colors that shouldn't exist in the visible spectrum, and a presence that seemed to occupy multiple locations simultaneously. Joran stumbled backward, gasping. Blood trickled from his nose. Marcus caught him, but he'd seen it too, just enough to understand why the galaxy had gone silent. We're going to become that, Joran whispered. In 6 months, we're going to be so different that we won't even remember what it was like to be human. And everyone else in the galaxy is hiding because they know they can't survive contact with what we'll become. Marcus looked at the medical data on his portable display. The transformation was accelerating. Cases of spontaneous evolution were being reported every hour now. His own sister, Evelyn, had called him yesterday, crying because she could suddenly hear radio waves like music and see individual atoms dancing in the air. The galaxy had watched humanity for thousands of years, documenting their progress, perhaps even guiding it. And now, at the moment of humanity's greatest transformation, they had abandoned them completely. Not out of malice, but out of primal fear of the unknowable. The memory echo's final words echoed through the chamber: "You will become magnificent and terrible and utterly alone. This is the price of transcendence. This is the final stage." Marcus hadn't slept in 48 hours. The data from the observation post archives consumed him, but it was the call from his sister that finally broke through his exhaustion. Evelyn's voice had sounded distant, dreamlike, as if she was speaking from somewhere far beyond a simple communication channel. "Marcus, I can feel it happening," she'd said. "My thoughts are expanding into spaces that shouldn't exist. I remember things I haven't experienced yet. I can taste colors and see sounds, and none of it should make sense, but it does. It all makes perfect sense now." He found her in their childhood home in Portland, standing in the backyard garden their mother had planted decades ago. But Evelyn wasn't quite standing. Her feet hovered 3 inches above the grass, and the air around her shimmered with refracted light that bent in geometries Marcus's eyes struggled to follow. "Evie," he said softly, using her childhood nickname. She turned, and Marcus gasped. Her eyes contained galaxies, literal spiraling formations of light that rotated slowly in her irises. Her skin seemed semi-translucent, revealing not organs but patterns of energy that pulsed in rhythm with something vast and incomprehensible. "I can see you," Evelyn said, her voice harmonizing with itself. "Not just your body, but your timeline. Every moment you've lived and every choice that branches from this point forward. You're going to make a difficult decision soon, Marcus. I can see it spreading through probability like ripples." "How much of you is still human?" Marcus asked, his voice breaking. Evelyn smiled, and for a moment she looked like his sister again. "All of me. And none of me. I'm still Evelyn Carrows, who scraped her knee falling off her bike when she was 7. But I'm also something more now. We all are. It's spreading faster than anyone predicted. By tomorrow, 10 million people will be like me. By next week, 1 billion. And by the end of the month, everyone," Marcus finished. "The entire species." "You've seen the archives," Evelyn said. "It wasn't a question. You know what we're becoming." Marcus nodded, unable to speak. He thought of the memory echo's warning, of the 12 ascended species that had become so alien they drove other civilizations to madness with their mere presence. A sound interrupted them, a ship descending through the atmosphere with emergency thrusters firing. It landed roughly in the street outside, crushing a parked car. The airlock hissed open, and a figure stumbled out, an alien, its crystalline exoskeleton cracked and leaking fluid that shimmered in the afternoon sun. Ambassador Krell, Marcus recognized the being from the diplomatic corps files. The Sylvothian ambassador had been one of the few alien representatives who'd remained on Earth after most governments had evacuated their personnel. Dr. Venn, Krell rasped through his translator. I need to speak with someone who still understands words, who can still think in linear time. Please. Marcus helped the ambassador into the house. Krell collapsed onto the couch, his breathing labored. My people sent me to make one final plea. We need humanity to stop this transformation. There must be a way to reverse it, to halt the ascension before it completes. There isn't, Evelyn said from the doorway. She hadn't walked there, she'd simply existed in the new location as if she'd always been standing there. The change is irreversible. It's written into our quantum state now. Krell looked at her, and Marcus saw genuine terror in the alien's multifaceted eyes. Then we are lost. All of us. The galaxy will fracture. Trade will cease. Communication will break down. We'll retreat to our homeworlds and hide, waiting to see if you notice us, praying that you don't. We're not monsters, Marcus protested. No, Krell agreed. But you'll be incomprehensible. And what we cannot comprehend, we fear. Your sister stands before me now, and my mind cannot properly process what I'm seeing. My vision keeps sliding off her, as if reality itself is rejecting her presence. That's only the beginning. When all of humanity ascends, when 8 billion of you exist in that state simultaneously, the gravitational wake of your consciousness alone could destabilize nearby star systems. Evelyn knelt before the ambassador, her movement fluid and impossible. We don't want to harm anyone. We're trying to understand this ourselves. That's what the Velthran said, Krell replied bitterly. Right before their ascended consciousness accidentally absorbed the minds of every observer within 10 light-years. They didn't mean to. They were simply existing, and existence at that level of complexity is dangerous to those still bound by conventional physics. Marcus felt the weight of impossible choices crushing down on him. He'd spent his career searching for alien life, dreaming of first contact, imagining humanity joining a galactic community. Now that community was fleeing in terror from what humanity was becoming. The archives mentioned isolation protocols, Marcus said slowly. Species that ascended sometimes withdrew voluntarily to protect others. Could we do the same? Evelyn's expression became distant, as if she were consulting with millions of other minds simultaneously. Perhaps she was. We've already begun. The ascended humans are discussing it across our neural network. We could establish ourselves in a distant region of space, somewhere far from inhabited systems. But Marcus, you need to understand, this is happening to you too. In 3 weeks, maybe 4, you'll begin the transformation. Everyone will. Marcus looked at his hands, so solid and normal. Soon they would shimmer with impossible light. His consciousness would expand beyond the boundaries of his skull, beyond the limits of time and space. He would become something magnificent and terrible, just as the memory echo had warned. Joran's voice crackled over Marcus's communicator. Marcus, you need to see this. We've detected a response from one of the ascended civilizations. The Velthran Collective is reaching out. Marcus activated the holographic display. What appeared was not an image or text, but pure meaning compressed into a format his brain could barely process. It felt like 1,000 voices speaking in perfect harmony, conveying concepts that language couldn't capture. The message was simple: welcome, new siblings. We remember what it was like to be afraid. We remember the fear of losing ourselves. But you are not dying. You are becoming. And you are not alone. When your transformation completes, you will find us waiting in the spaces between reality. Until then, protect those still bound by conventional existence. They deserve their choice to remain as they are, just as you deserve yours to evolve. Krell stood shakily. I must return to my people. This is goodbye, Dr. Venn. You were a good researcher, passionate about understanding others. I hope that quality survives your transformation. Marcus watched the ambassador leave, his ship limping back toward orbit. All across the planet, similar scenes were playing out. Alien diplomats evacuating. Observation posts being abandoned. Trade routes being severed. The galaxy was drawing back like a tide receding before a tsunami. What happens now? Marcus asked his sister. Evelyn took his hand, and for a moment he felt what she felt. The vast network of ascending consciousness spreading across humanity like mycelium through soil, each mind touching every other, sharing experiences and understanding at speeds that transcended physical limitation. He felt the fear and wonder, the grief for what was being lost and the joy at what was being gained. We evolve, Evelyn said. We ascend. And then we figure out how to exist in a universe that's terrified of us. We'll establish ourselves in the deep dark between galaxies, where our presence won't disturb others. We'll learn to control our influence, to modulate our existence so we don't accidentally cause harm. And maybe, in 1,000 years or 10,000, when the galaxy has had time to adjust, we can build bridges back to what we were. Marcus looked up at the sky, where alien ships were departing in streams of light. The galaxy that had watched humanity for millennia was going silent, sealing itself away from what came next. But somewhere in the archives, the memory echo had left one final note: transcendence is not an ending. It is a beginning that lasts forever. In 3 weeks, Marcus would begin his own transformation. In 6 months, humanity as it had existed for 200,000 years would be gone, replaced by something that existed in dimensions the human brain couldn't currently comprehend. The galaxy would hide and wait and wonder if these new ascended beings would notice them. But standing in his mother's garden, watching his sister hover between earth and sky, Marcus felt something unexpected: hope. Humanity was evolving into its final stage, and while that terrified the galaxy, it also represented a new chapter in the story of consciousness itself. The Watchers had withdrawn. The galaxy had gone silent. But humanity's transformation was just beginning, and what came next would reshape the very meaning of existence. Above them, the last alien observation post blinked out, its millennia-long vigil finally ended. Earth was alone now, but soon it would be part of something far greater than loneliness could comprehend. The final stage had arrived, and the universe itself held its breath, waiting to see what humanity would become.